Meghan Markle has never been more famous. She has also never been less believed. That is not a coincidence. Those two things are connected. And when you trace the thread, it leads somewhere she never intended. She left the royal family and called it liberation. She launched a Netflix documentary and called it truth. She started a lifestyle brand and called it healing. And none of it, not one single piece of it exists without the single thing she has never stopped selling: the idea that she is the victim. This is the story of the victim brand, how it was built, how it was deployed, and what happens when the market starts to notice. Before we get to where she is now, we have to go back. Meghan Markle was a working actress. 7 seasons of Suits, a lifestyle blog called The Tig, 15 years studying how attention works. She was not Diana. She was not a princess waiting to be discovered. She was a media-savvy professional who understood the machinery of celebrity well enough to use it. When she met Harry, she did not enter that world naively. She entered it with a skill set. The early narrative was precise. The biracial American actress, the progressive royal, the symbol of a modernizing monarchy. The story told itself. And she knew it. What she could not have anticipated, or perhaps could, was how useful the collision would eventually become.
Look, I was really ashamed to say it at the time, and ashamed to have to admit it to Harry, especially, because I know how much loss he's suffered. But I knew that if I didn't say it, that I would do it, and I just didn't want to be alive anymore.
In January 2020, Harry and Meghan stepped back from royal duties. And here's where it gets interesting. They didn't just leave. They narrated the leaving. Every exit has a story. The story they chose was not, "We wanted a different life." The story was, "We were forced out." That is a specific frame, and in the attention economy, it is a profitable one. Victimhood is not just an emotional position, it is an asset. March 2021. In one 72-minute interview, Meghan Markle did what generations of palace scandals had failed to do. She made the monarchy look small, but more importantly, she changed the question. Before Oprah, people were asking why Meghan and Harry walked away. After Oprah, they were asking what the palace had done to her. The racism allegations, the mental health crisis, the moment she said she did not want to be alive. I'm not here to tell you that pain wasn't real, but I am here to say this. When pain that private is delivered in primetime, framed by Oprah, and watched by millions, it stops being only a confession. It becomes a campaign. Oprah got the biggest interview of the decade. CBS got a primetime ratings win. Archewell got a Netflix deal reportedly valued at up to $100 million within 6 months. The pain may have been real, but the rollout was immaculate. There is a sympathetic version of this story. 2 people overwhelmed by palace pressure, media cruelty, family dysfunction, and a public life that became impossible to survive inside. I understand that version, but that version is about leaving. This version is about launching. Because leaving the monarchy is one thing. Leaving the monarchy with a Netflix series, a Spotify deal, a lifestyle brand, a documentary crew, and a jam rollout is something else entirely. That is not disappearing from the machine. That is building a smaller one with your name on it. Let's talk about the business. In 2020, Harry and Meghan signed a multi-year Netflix deal reportedly valued somewhere between $60 and $100 million, though neither side confirmed the figure. Either way, Netflix was not paying for 2 former royals to discover hobbies. It was paying for access, drama, proximity, and the aftershock of the most famous royal exit in modern history. The first big product was obvious: Harry and Meghan. 6 hours of grievance, romance, palace tension, family fallout, and carefully lit vulnerability. It worked because the wound was still fresh. But after that, the business problem became impossible to ignore. Once you sell the escape, what comes next? Because Netflix did not buy a diary entry. It bought a content company. And content companies have to produce content people actually want to watch. And then came the part that tells you what the market actually thought. The original Netflix deal did not end with a giant victory lap. It shifted into a smaller first-look arrangement. That matters because a first-look deal is not Netflix handing you the keys to the kingdom. It means Netflix gets the first chance to say yes. But unfortunately for Meghan and Harry, it also gets the chance to say no. Spotify was even cleaner. Archwell Audio signed a podcast deal reportedly worth around $20 million. Meghan launched Archetypes in August 2022, 12 episodes, 1 season. By June 2023, Spotify and Archwell were done, and reporting at the time said Archetypes was the only full series delivered under the deal. Then Bill Simmons, Spotify's head of podcast innovation and monetization, said the quiet part out loud. The deal had not worked. And that is when Meghan's public identity started changing again. The victim narrative had peaked in 2021. The commercial infrastructure built around it had under-delivered. So by 2024, the story had changed. The palace trauma got quieter. The lifestyle branding got louder. The institution that supposedly broke her was no longer the center of the pitch. Now it was soft-focus kitchens, curated flowers, luxury friendship, and jars of jam mailed out like royal warrants from Montecito. That is not necessarily failure, but it is a pivot. And when a brand pivots that hard, the question is not just where it is going. The question is, what stopped working? In January 2023, Harry published Spare, Real Grief, priced, packaged, promoted, and sold to 1.4 million people in its first week across the US, UK, and Canada. And Meghan was everywhere inside it, not as the author, not as the narrator, but as the emotional center of the story whenever the story needed her to be. That is where the contradiction gets harder to ignore. Because there is a difference between telling your story once and turning that story into a product line of platforms. Oprah made it global. Netflix made it serialized. Spotify made it intimate. Spare made it permanent. And Instagram made it shoppable. At some point, the story was no longer just being told. It was being repackaged, reformatted, and resold to whichever platform was paying attention next. And when Meghan returned to Instagram, the old argument got harder to maintain because she was no longer simply resisting public consumption. She was directing it. There is one comparison that comes up every time Meghan's story is discussed: Diana. And it is worth taking seriously because the parallel is real. But so is the place where it breaks. Diana entered the royal family young. She found the institution crushing, and when the palace tried to control the story, she used the media to tell her own. The Panorama interview. The book Diana, Her True Story. The carefully chosen access that bypassed official palace channels. So yes, the template is there. A trapped royal woman, a hostile institution, a press machine, a public confession. But Diana used the media like a flare. Meghan used it like infrastructure. That is the difference. Diana's media war was messy, desperate, and personal. Meghan's became organized, monetized, and extended across platforms. The comparison works right up until the moment survival becomes strategy.
Do you think Mrs. Parker Bowles was a factor in the breakdown of your marriage?
Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
Here's where the comparison starts to fall apart. Diana never got a second act. She never had the chance to turn her escape into a production company, a podcast deal, a streaming slate, or a lifestyle brand. Her story froze at the point of tragedy, which is part of why people still protect it so fiercely. Meghan's story did not freeze. It kept going. And the longer it went, the more the emotional center of the story became commercial architecture. The pain became the introduction. The palace became the villain. The exit became the origin story. And everything after that had to answer one question: what do you sell once sympathy has already done its job? That is why the Diana comparison only goes so far. Diana became a symbol because her story was cut short. Meghan became a brand because hers kept expanding. Here is what has to be acknowledged. None of this works if Meghan Markle is not genuinely compelling. She is sharp. She understands framing. She understands emotional positioning. She understands that in modern fame, the person who controls the wound usually controls the story. And on that front, she outplayed an institution that still communicates like it is sending telegrams to a country house. She walked into one of the most guarded families in the world and walked out with global sympathy, a content deal, a fan base, and a villain. That is not luck. That is skill. The question was never whether Meghan knew how to tell a story. The question is whether the story she told was the whole truth or the version that made the next chapter possible. Every major celebrity brand has an audience. Meghan's has something more useful: a defense system. The Sussex Squad is not just a normal fan base in the way people usually understand fan culture. Critical coverage does not simply create disagreement. It creates enforcement. Journalists get flooded, outlets get pressured, comment sections turn into loyalty tests, and every negative headline is treated less like criticism and more like another attack on Meghan's survival story. That is the genius of the frame. If the central narrative is persecution, then criticism does not weaken the brand. It proves the brand's point. The attack becomes evidence. The backlash becomes confirmation. The fan base does not just defend Meghan, it protects the story Meghan needs the public to believe. And once a brand can turn scrutiny into proof of victimhood, it becomes almost impossible to critique without feeding the machine. This was never just a story about a woman leaving the royal family. It is a story about what the attention economy does to personal pain, how suffering becomes content, how content becomes brand, and how brand eventually starts consuming the person it was supposed to protect. Meghan Markle did not invent that system. She did not create a world where victimhood can become leverage, where confession can become currency, and where trauma can open doors that talent alone might not. She read the room, and for a while, she played it better than almost anyone. But the problem with the victim brand is that it cannot expand forever. Eventually, the audience stops asking what happened to you and starts asking what you built after it. That is where Meghan is now. She is trying to make the pivot from wounded royal survivor to aspirational founder. And maybe she really is happy. Maybe she really has moved on. But the brand that got her here was built on the claim that she could not. That is the trap. Victimhood needs belief. Victory needs proof. And you cannot sell both forever. So don't ask whether Meghan Markle is a victim. Ask what happens when the story that made her powerful runs out of room to grow. If you found this interesting, like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment telling me who deserves the next deep dive.